program is brought to you in association with First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?
Many a times we hear of people being overstretched financially, having more debt than they can afford to pay off. The resultant outcome has been a rise in what has now been infamously dubbed "in the matter between," found in our local newspapers, where a financier has taken legal action against a client for non-payment. People have had to sell their houses, their cars, their clothes, their furniture, even kitchen utensils to be able to pay off loans because they were over-indebted. Although we see this happening much more frequently for individual people, it has happened to companies as well. This type of scenario is what is termed corporate over-indebtedness, where a company's liabilities far exceed its assets. What we normally hear is that company la jewa, khaba bona le haile sepe. There are cases where a company would be liquidated, but the assets could not be enough to settle the debt that the company acquired over time. While corporate indebtedness makes 11% of all debt relative to GDP, according to the Bank of Botswana's report on debt, the scenario is not a myth, but a reality that most entrepreneurs and corporates have gone through. What we seek to find out in this segment are the exact figures of corporate over-indebtedness and what leads to this happening. To answer these questions is our guest, Corporate Finance Manager Utsile Nchingani.
Before we can begin though, we might just want to understand what is debt. Debt in simple terms is where a company or an individual goes out to a bank or a financial institution and seeks a loan to repay over a period of time. So now, according to Bank of Botswana, corporate indebtedness, or rather indebtedness, is split into three portions. Number one, household, corporates and the government. And relative to GDP, the highest contributor to indebtedness in the country is the households at about 18.4%, the corporates at about 11.9%. So, those statistics show that the level of indebtedness in the country is not worrisome. However, if not addressed, it might lead to companies not being able to repay their loans back to the bank.
Utsile, what possible ramifications can we see on the banking sector if this is not addressed?
Over-indebtedness means that there's a very high probability that the company will not be able to pay back its loans to the banks. And if it's not able to pay back its loans to the banks, it means that the bank is unable to make as much money that it had projected to make, or as much money that it had budgeted to make. That means that the banking sector ideally is affected negatively by this.
Can we also see any consequences on the economy?
Because the banking sector contributes a significant portion to the economy, if its expected income is reduced, it means that definitely whatever it also has to contribute to the economy is also reduced. So that means that the growth of the economy, because it's also dependent on the banking sector, is also reduced. So ideally, there will be a slowdown in the growth of the economy if over-indebtedness is not controlled, which will basically lead to institutions not being able to pay, and not being able to pay means that the bank is unable to also make money and is unable to contribute to the economy.
Take us through a process where a company is unable to meet its debt obligations, all right? What is the legal process or route to take in this instance?
So before we could speak to the legal processes that take place when a company is unable to meet its debt obligation, it's important to highlight that at initiation, the business is recommended, or the business is advised, to come and speak to the bank to basically discuss other alternative ways or other alternative repayment plans that can be put in place to try and see how they could address or reduce whatever exposure they're currently under. For facilities that are unsecured, meaning that they don't have any collateral attached to them, you may be able to come to the bank and sit down and say, this is where I am as a business, this is how much I used to make, this is how much I'm making now, and unfortunately I'm not making as much as I was able to do. And then you could sit down and discuss a repayment plan. But in a situation where all that fails, there is proper communication that takes place to say, because when we initially agreed, when we gave you this facility, it was legally binding, and an ability to honor it would eventually lead to us going the legal route, where we engage attorneys to further help us to try and recover any other amount that we could possibly recover because we have given you a loan or a facility in that regard.
Say a company was liquidated. What are the implications on the directors and their fitness to hold office, their leadership abilities, if you will?
So what we need to appreciate regarding liquidation is that it could exist as a result, number one, obviously as purely mismanagement of the business by the directors, or the industry that the company is currently performing in ceases to exist, or the company has tried by all means and has failed to see opportunities in the current industry that they're performing in. So liquidation cannot necessarily always point to the director's inability to generate income for the business. It could also be unforeseen measures, like as we are currently in COVID-19, there are industries that have been hit hard and would struggle to recover, and some might not even recover and might seek or call to be liquidated to say we are unable to at all make any income, make any repayments to any institutions that we have obligations with. Now, because a business is also linked to the directors of that current company, liquidation could be at a point where if the directors have put in that personal sureties in those businesses, financial institutions have the ability legally to try and see if they can recover any of what they are owed by the company through their directors.